Yeah, this is exciting, man. I'm sitting down with Francesco Sideli. How are you, sir?
Hey, doing great. Great to be here, Lance. Thanks so much.
Dude, thanks so much for joining us. We've been in the middle of this big idea, creativity and justice, which really, really boiled down. We're just having really awesome conversations about creativity. And so there's really there's no limits here. We don't have to turn it towards societal transformation and justice oriented stuff. We're just talking creativity. And man, I've been getting so lit up by the people I'm spending time with. So Francesco is the creative director of our creative arts department here at Bethel Church. And so stoked to have you. Talk about some of the stuff that you're doing, and we'll start there.
Yeah, that's great. So, obviously there's, in any sort of department and any sort of thing that we're doing, we're always looking at, hey, what are we doing? What does that look like? And then where are the places of output, I guess, if I could say it that. And so we've kind of highlighted a few different areas that we are outputting into, one being with the School of Ministry and one being with the local church. And another one saying, hey, what is happening in the city of Reading and in the context of the city of Reading that is really not necessarily problems, but maybe just more things that are continually coming up that maybe no one is seeing, and maybe that a group of people are seeing, but either way, that we are providing some level of, whether it be solution or dot connecting or whatever it is. And so oddly enough, a couple of things that we've done recently is I had one of my teams and I said, hey, I'm dreaming about the future. I'm dreaming about the future of Reading. And if we could prophetically understand what's happening in Reading right now as a current basis, we could also look historically and say, Lord, can you show me some things that happened in the past to give us insight for the present day condition and then even for the future? And then could we travel into the future? Because one of the primary functions of the Holy Spirit, according to John 16:13, is that he will tell us what's about to take place. So if we look in that sort of context, can I look into heaven and see what heaven is building on the earth for Reading within the next 20, 50, 75, 100 years? And so I said to one of our teams, hey, could you guys just take a look into Reading in, let's say, 30 years? And so we kind of we were in the process of creating this coloring book for children, calling it Reading 2050. What is Reading going to look like in 30 years? And so the team went out over the course of maybe 8 months, 9 months, and just kind of went around Reading, praying for people, engaging into different type things, because I said, hey, I want you guys in the city. I want you to go to the ice cream shop. I want you to go to the coffee shop. I want you to go to the nail salon. I want you to go all over the place, get to know what's happening inside the city, get to go to the bus station, get to go to the courthouse, get to go to all these places so you can get a pulse on what's happening, so that it'll give you even more of a flavor towards what's going to be happening down the line.
Wow.
And so, so I think it's that sort of thing. So one of the things that I've been getting excited about is I took a peek into the future and saw, hey, there's I say that potential, but I saw in the future in Reading in the spirit that there would be a car museum in Reading. Now, I don't think that that's too much of a stretch, considering we have the cool April nights and a lot of car shows and sort of that whole thing. But having an organized place where there's like Turtle Bay has their museum, that there would be like a car museum type thing. I'm like, oh, that would be great. And I saw that happening, but I saw children right now that would be coloring pictures of this car museum that doesn't even exist in Reading. And then in 30 years, they end up working for that same car museum because they're like, oh, that was what I was coloring when I was 6 years old. That wasn't even in Reading, but somehow connecting the dot toward the creative potential of imagination and what God is speaking and looking into the spirit, but not calling it that. But you know what I mean?
So, I love that. Can you talk more about that? Like that, you just talked about like creative imagination, like the future. Yeah. What do you mean? That sounds really interesting.
Yeah, so I think to boil it down, because I love when people talk about mystical topics. The hard part with mystical topics is, what are they talking? What are mystical people talking about? And if it's not practical, this is going to sound like a very extreme statement, so the viewers I might get some hate mail for this, but to say something is mystical and beautiful, even if it's a spiritual topic, even if it's something we hear on a Sunday morning, even if it's coming from the church, if it's not practical, it's not necessarily a waste of time. But if I can't explain it to my 5-year-old, then it's pretty much not useful to the way that it should be in that way. So I think most things and most concepts should be able to be translatable towards the 95-year-old to the 5-year-old and everywhere in between, you know what I mean? And so in whatever way that we could communicate those things. So if that makes sense.
That's good.
So I think
so therein, creative imagination, like unpack that a little bit.
yeah. So yeah, with creative imagination, I think what I'm attempting to do, I think with a lot of people, what others are attempting to do, is saying almost like Paul was writing to the church in Ephesus in the first chapter, saying, "I pray that the eyes of your heart be enlightened," and then he rattles off a list of things that they would be enlightened to, and so I get excited about obviously the inheritance that's in the saints, the glory that of the Lord and the presence of the Lord, that and the knowledge of the presence of the Lord that covers the earth like the waters cover the sea. And so I've been captivated by this expression of the eyes of my heart, and all, also Matthew chapter 5 and the Beatitudes, blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. What does that mean? What's happening there? So I think I'm continually trying to figure out, pressing into the Lord, engaging the Lord, spending time, that whole thing, by saying, hey, what do I see happening in that space, whether it's downtown in the city or, whatever, what's the potential of what it could be? Where are we at in different stages of that? So I think I'm continually on the canvas of my heart and the canvas of my mind, trying to imagine, hey, what does that look like? It'd be no different. You obviously, Lance, you do a lot of public speaking. And I did a public speaking thing a bit ago, and so a bunch of people came up to me and like, "Wow, you did great with these components, and how did you do that?" And I said, "Oh, as I was going, the major way that I prepped for it was when I was going to sleep, I imagined myself speaking, and when I woke up, I imagined myself speaking, and when I was driving, I imagined myself speaking, and I was at the back of the stage watching myself, and then I would try to go closer and closer and closer so I could be in the moment." And so when I finally stepped into the moment, I was like, I've been here for months. So it was nothing new, And so I think that there's an aspect of, if we look at biblical standpoint, I mean, God is showing John in the book of Revelation what the New Jerusalem and the city is going to look like. He's doing that with Ezekiel picking up by the hair, and he's seeing this whole blueprint. Noah is seeing plans for an ark before they're even in existence, because potentially there was an ark in heaven, and then there was an ark created in the earth. And Noah was that bridge to create what was in heaven to earth, if we say it like that. So I think I'm thinking through, hey, how do I imagine what is not yet, so that I could become almost like the bridge or the portal or the doorway or the access point or whatever we want to call it. And everyone loves running around using the words portal, and it could sound more mystical or more nebulous, but I could be the access point. I could be the one that kind of creates that space. And that's what we have with all different types of artistic expressions, poetry and songwriting, all different types of things throughout history, and so I would even say science and literature and medicine. I mean, all those things are bridges between what God is doing in his world, which is everything, and then how we could manifest and bring those things into existence. So looping back to the car museum, I'm seeing a car museum. I don't know if anyone else is, but either way, I'm praying into it and also praying, Lord, maybe I'm the bridge for that. And maybe, Lord, maybe you'll make me, like you'll cause some revenue to come through, and maybe I'll be super wealthy, and maybe I'll or be connected with some people to bring that into being. And so I think the idea of imagining it and then bringing it into being, I think is
That's great
in the creative process.
I love it. So I'd love to hear more about your journey and some of what creativity means to you, like how creativity functions, how it's a part of your world. We spent some time with somebody that's in the film industry, and just hearing him talk about like, okay, this is my way. And it's, it's very unique to hear. I'm like, wow, that's both unique and inspiring.
Yeah.
So yeah, just maybe what creativity means to you, some of the drive in your life, being a creative person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I guess creativity for me would be the understanding that I'm made in the image of the Creator, and that He is always has, always will, and is still creating creating with
Nice.
words, creating with thoughts, creating with material. Just everything becomes that process. And I think, it seems like the saints of old knew God first as a creator, not as a lamb or a lion or a shepherd or whatever. I think they became to know about a lot of those other facets and dimensions of the Lord. But knowing the Lord as a creator and being able to put that together, I think is so beautiful. So I think the idea of being creative is open for everyone, is open for humanity, because we are all inherently creative. The odd part that it's become is it's had this weird pendulum swing into, well, I'm a painter, therefore I'm a creative, or I write poems and I'm a creative, versus, hey, I'm a mechanic and I'm a creative, or I'm whatever. And so I realized that there is a creative industry. I do get that, and so I'm not watering down anyone's profession or output or what they do, but I think the idea that we all, for me, the creative part gets into the wisdom of God, and so I think Proverbs chapter 8, where we have creation happening and wisdom, and they kind of functioning together, is I want to be creative because I want to get to know the Lord, and I want to get to know the way the Lord thinks. I want to get to way the Lord happens with wisdom, and I think I'm so excited about wisdom.
Yeah.
So on a continual basis, I'm looking at ordinary situations that I'm involved with, just looking at, hey, how do I think differently about this? And something so many people say is, well, Francesco, you just think way differently. And I think it's been used for blessing and adversity in my life. But I think I'm trying to, as much as I can, just, hey, let me just think differently about these situations. And everyone's looking at it from this viewpoint. Are there other viewpoints in that spectrum that we could highlight, that maybe something else is happening there? And so for me, creativity gets into, I'm made in the image of God as a creator. I can create with my words, with my actions, with my speech, with my declaration, all that stuff. And that I'm pursuing and understanding the wisdom of God, the revelation of God, the understanding of God, almost like the Isaiah chapter 11, the 7 spirits of God, that I'm getting a better framework for how that world functions. Or I could say it like this: I'm becoming more familiar with that. So, and then because people will say to a creative or anybody in society, says, "How did you think that? How did you come up with that?" And I think then such a compliment or such a fuel to my engine is when people go, "Wow, that is so inspired." Not just that they're inspired by it, but the idea or the thought is inspired. Therefore, the chain reaction is it causes inspiration, and then that whole thing. So how do you take something super ordinary and make it so inspiring? That's, I think, the real beauty and the real talent.
What are your thoughts on the impact of creativity? So the fruits of creativity, and I know they're varied and there's a range, but you're just talking about that, like inspiration. Is that a fruit of creativity?
Yeah, I think inspiration is a fruit of creativity. Dreaming is a fruit of creativity. I think freedom could be a fruit of creativity. I think anarchy, chaos, discord. I mean, I think any one of those things could be used. I mean, so right, there's a lot of neutral terminology, and it's sort of like this is what I believe to be true, that there's a lot of neutral terms that it depends how you apply that term, that either makes it blessing or adversity. And so I think we have a lot of things that we call holy, but the occult has a lot of things that they call holy. It's the same word, it's the same principle, but it's devoted and dedicated to what we apply into that. So I think we could use creativity for blessing, for encouragement, for building up, for creating beautiful society, for creating what we would call maybe heaven on earth, creating freedom, creating harmony, creating dreaming, inspiration. I mean, there's so many things in society that have that. And also, I mean, we could there's concerts where people are dying, where there's portals that are being set up, that they're creative, but they are being used for demonic purposes or destruction or some of those things. So I think, yeah, there's a lot of that it's used on both sides, but I think all those really encapsulate, there's so much beauty to it. I think when we have people that go, huh, and I think those are some of the initial stages towards something is done creatively and people question. And I think it's initially getting the spark of questioning that really helps. Because we as society, I mean, all of us probably drive home the same way, drive to work the same way, get in the car the same way, put on our outfits the same way. We have a similar format, and routine is healthy. I'm not saying it's not, but we have a very routine way of just doing life. And so what would happen if you just took a different route home to drive? I think even in that causes some level of creativity, or it jumps us out of this framework that we create. So I think it's number one, healthy to create a framework. And it's also healthy to disrupt the framework, to just do something differently in that. Because sometimes I'm wanting to brainstorm about an idea that we're doing. And let's say I go into the office and I sit down and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna turn the lights, I'm gonna sit down in this chair that I always sit in, and I'm gonna brainstorm. But I'm just hitting writer's block. There's no creativity to it. There's nothing there. I'm like, well, how does one bypass that? So easy. Do something different. And I think, which is really the basis and the foundation of the Hebrew and Greek understanding of repentance, is I'm changing my mind, I'm changing my heart, I'm changing my action, and I'm just doing some different things. And so maybe I come into the office and I make a coffee. Maybe I go and get a coffee and I walk around the building. Maybe I go and talk to someone who I think I'm just walking around the building, but it's really a divine purpose for me to be in that conversation. And then that is so inspiring. And then I could use the momentum from that and take it into the next part. And then I think it's all these things that we're learning as creatives, as people, as, you know, in that way. I love when waves happen, and anyone can ride the wave. Then how do I help to generate the wave and build that wave with the Lord, and then learn how to ride that and then keep on going? So I think that's
great.
Yeah.
I love it. So it sounds like that's a big piece of your mission, is kind of disrupting normalcy in a sense. And in that, what I'm hearing is people are exposing themselves to trust, to faith, to the unknown.
Yeah.
Maybe a lack of comfort that's maybe creating some dependence on God, or some hunger for new ideas. Okay.
Yeah, because I think whenever something that emerges that surpasses expectation, I think there's a window there for some really beautiful thing to happen. So, we've set up our office in a certain way where it's a really creative space. But I said, listen, I could either talk about creativity or I could actually do it. And so you could walk into the office and go, oh my God, what is happening in here? And people usually walk by and they go, what is happening over here? They're overwhelmed by it. And I'll tell them, I says, I could either talk about creativity or I could just be it and do it. And where the creative space that I create is a reflection of what's in my heart. And I don't need to talk about it. You just walk by and see it and experience it in that way. So yeah, I think causing the different reaction, disrupting, challenging the status quo. I think all those things are really, really, really great for the creative, for the artist, for that. Because like, again, everyone gets stuck in certain patterns. Again, patterns are not bad. Ruts are not bad when they're carved out in a healthy way. Like all those are healthy, structures, frameworks, routines. Like I think we need all those, but if I'm so dependent on that I can't, there's no other room for expansion or thinking differently, or even looking at problems from a different angle, then I think we definitely are coming to a spot of like, hey, we definitely need some, not just, we would call it maybe creative solution, but we need some disruption into the mainstream thought of, oh, this is how everyone thinks. Why?
Yeah. What have you seen? I'd love to hear like things that you've seen in terms of the results of thinking differently. So thinking differently led to this in whatever situation. And it might be your creative works. It might be leadership stuff, might be relational. I don't know.
Yeah. I think honestly, it affects everything. So probably more in a localized way. I'm thinking through, like, how do I set up time and relationship building with my wife? And how do I set up time and relationship building with the family? And I could say, oh, well, this is what we've traditionally always done in our culture and our family and our society. But then sometimes my wife and I were like, oh, well, what if we just do something different? And I think it's those moments that I've realized that, my kids are actually so hungry for that. So I came home the other day and I said, okay, boys, this is what we're going to do. First, I'm going to have you guys clean. Then secondly, then I'm going to have everyone at the table. We're going to color a little bit. And I kept on saying, okay. And then I have something special after that. And they're just so hungry, so excited. What else? What else is there? What's the hunger? They're just so hungry, so excited for the next thing, the creative thing, the fun aspect. And then I'm like, hey, normally we would do this, but hey, everyone in the van, we're going to go to this location or go to this store or go get ice cream or whatever it is. Then it's just a little disruption from the normal routine. But even the little bit of disruption causes this, we did one thing one day, and we went to the farmer's market and got some fruits and vegetables. And my son looks over at me and he goes, Papa, this is the best day. And he just was having the greatest time. And we picked a couple of peaches, and then we got like a snow cone. I mean, it was like, and there was jazz playing. I mean, like nothing that anyone would call like, this is a portal of inspiration has opened up over my life. But for my children, it just became like, this was the best time. And we were lighthearted. We were happy. There was just so much joy and love in that space. And that's even like just on a very, very, very small scale, in that way. And so we've seen it then operate where it's like, I'm in another country in Europe, and they have a mural that the one guy owned this business and said, hey, I'd love to paint this mural on the back of this building. And coincidentally, I had finished this mural design the day that a newspaper article came out introducing that this whole courtyard, the city beautification project, happened. So it collided on the same time frame. And so many people from the city came out and said, oh, I guess this mural is coinciding with this whole city. Like no one had any idea, but it was so choreographed.
Wow.
And so, it was in the newspaper, and I had no idea. I just was like, oh, let me just paint a couple of things on this side of this building. And it became this really beautiful thing that the city had endorsed, and people were coming out to take photos with and engaging. And it was just a little bit of a different thing that caused a different reaction to make people wonder, be in awe, spark curiosity, and I think anytime you could just continue to ignite that spark, like I said, it causes something inside of someone to go, huh, what else? What else is possible? And I think then I think, people have said, they're like, oh, we get around each other. So I have a friend who's a musician, and we were chatting one day, and I said, hey, check this out. And I just was dreaming up some different thoughts and ideas. So what about this and that? We just had this ideation session. And by the end of it, I felt like I was having this out of body experience where the Lord was it was just so energizing. And then my friend was like, oh my gosh, I'm going wild right now. My thoughts, my imagination is just being like this fuel all over it's just incredible. And we were just sitting there just talking through something, and you come alive where we have this where Jesus is talking to the disciples, and the disciples don't even know that it's Jesus. They're on the road to Emmaus, and they make this statement and go like, didn't our hearts burn within us, And whether your heart's burning within you or outside of you, however, I don't know how that works, but I think you have this thing where it's like, oh, when your heart is just burning for something and something's coming alive within you. I think we've all been there. I took my wife to a ballet one time, and in New York City on not the opening night, but like during the holidays, and we left, and the whole experience was so inspiring, and one thing after the next. But I don't want to only limit it towards, oh, it has to be a ballet or something with music or something with art. It could be, I was hanging out in Los Angeles doing a tour, like a virtual reality tour, and was so inspired by the technology, and so, or culinary, or there's so many different thoughts and expressions with how things manifest. It's just fascinating.
I love that though. Just awe, wonder, wow, versus zombie, flatline, just static. Like you're talking about a like waking state.
Yeah.
You're talking about people, and then back to your original point, like we are creative because we come from a creator. And so living in that state of awakened and alive and inspired is that's very inspiring. I said that word twice in the same sentence.
But I think even I was trying to do it stuff where, like, let's say we have the ministry school at Bethel, and I mean, we're talking about students handing in homework, right? So I go to the team and I'm like, hey, it seems like we're having maybe not an issue, but we're running into some complication with this dynamic, even just talking about homework. And I say, hey, we need some creative solutions for this. And so even just highlighting the term, I need a creative solution for homework, even seems so counterculture, because we think, oh, the creative solution should be for making an art installation in a building, or doing something for a beautification project, or doing some architecture thing, you know? And so I'm trying to even localize it to everything we do in life, where it's like, hey, I need a creative solution for homework. Hey, everyone's turning in their supplies, you know, their office supplies. We need a creative way to organize paper clips, you know, and it sounds so dumb because people would just miss it, you know, but I think we look at Solomon, right? And the Queen of Sheba comes and she's fascinated by the plates and the table setting, and has that as her framework. And I'm like, oh, there's something else there. Like, what's happening there? I mean, did he just do it differently enough or unique enough that it's like, you know, I mean, I go to some restaurants and they put napkins on the table, and you always anticipate there being napkins on the table. But when the napkin is shaped like, I don't know, a duck or something like that, you're like, what is happening here? Like, you know, do I touch it? Do I not? You know, what's happening? And I think it just causes enough reaction to like, oh, and I think when there's enough of those reactions that happen, it's like not a sensory overload, but it's what's happening here, you know? And so I think my dream is that there's situations that are set up that create an experience. And I mean, we look in the culinary world, people don't want to just go out to eat anymore. It's just, who cares? Most people, everyone shut down COVID, everyone's at home anyway. Most of the world is like, you know, a better home chef than sometimes what you could even get in a restaurant. So why would I go out to a restaurant if I don't want to clean the dishes tonight. Okay, use paper dish. But if they're like, oh, I want to go out to dinner tonight, why? I want a beautiful experience. So I think everything's morphing and turning into this, hey, I want something of an experience. And so I think if we as the body of Christ, as we as people could understand this idea of creating experience, then I think we got something so beautiful there.
I would love to hear some of your influences. I don't know, books, films, mediums, like what over the years.
Yeah, I mean, over the years. So yeah, everyone's always asking me, hey, what books are you reading? And I'm typically saying children's books, because we have 4 boys, 5 years old and under right now. But I think I really enjoy podcasts and YouTube videos and stuff like that, you know. So I was just looking up about Bible cartoons and how they're illustrating Bible cartoons and Bible stories, because I'm just curious on how that works right now, you know, like, and what that looks like. And, you know, I was creating some time-lapse videos with biblical stories, and we're looking at that space of what that looks like, highlighting some different stories from the Bible and different aspects of storytelling. But I mean, I love film, but I'm one of those hypersensitive people that if I watch a film and there's something funky about it, that I don't always do the greatest, you know.
Yeah.
There's a book I was reading through a bit ago, and I've been thinking a bunch about this. I can't recall the exact name of the book, but it's a biography of a guy named Dag Hammarskjöld, I think is his name. My apologies, Swedish people, if I didn't pronounce that right. But he was the Attorney General, I think, of the United Nations back in like the 30s, 40s, 50s, somewhere in that time frame. And he has all this poetry. He was a mystical. He thought mystically, loved Jesus. Jesus loved him always, and did a lot of great things, and just loved his thought process. And so I think I look at guys like that and say, wow, that is so inspiring. I love teaching people, and I love talking about our heavenly citizenship and how our relationship with God and getting to know God in that way. But I think, what does it look like then to be in positions where we could just access our relationship with God to bless the world around us? And I think, you know, stories like that, I think, are really inspiring in that way. You know, I like going to art galleries and looking at painters and seeing, the great Renaissance things and all the visual communication that happened in those ways. Sometimes concerts are super inspiring in that way. Anything that I think I can engage with that just thinks differently, is
Right.
really helpful.
Is there a medium you like to work with? I don't know how, like, as you're doing creative stuff, where you end up doing that through. Sounds like food, sounds like murals. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy food, right? I think food is one of the most beautiful medium, and we're always having to eat. I mean, I guess unless you're fasting, but I think with my family, we're always cooking and enjoying that process and talking about the food and flavors and understanding. And so I think by nature, I'm trained as a professional artist, and many people just think, oh, Francesco's trained as a professional artist, he must be a painter. But my thing was that if I wrap my identity only around painting and you take painting away, then I would assume that I'm nobody, because everything's been taken from me. But if I then am a creative who innovates, or I'm a creative who challenges, or I'm a creative who disrupts, or I'm a creative who inspires, or I'm a creative in whatever output that is, I innovate through so many different means, and so it could be the way that we're raising our kids. It could be the way that we're designing our house. It could be the way that we're laying out the kitchen, on how the kids could help put away the dishes, and then we could function better in more of a streamlined operation, And so, I mean, it just influences everything. So I enjoy drawing. I don't paint as much now. I don't devote as much of the time to that. But I've been doing a lot more digital stuff in that way with artwork, which is something I'm excited about. I think the idea of Web3, the metaverse, NFTs, that whole thing, I think we have a really interesting space that we can move into with the church aspect, and being on the cutting edge of some things that are being innovative, and the technology of, augmented reality, virtual reality. I think it's fascinating to me.
Nice. What would you tell somebody that's maybe afraid of creativity, or has been creative and is in a place of really feeling pretty still, like pretty unable, pretty stuck?
Yeah. Well, to the stuck crowd, I think we could tend to create a certain way, and then for everyone to say, well, this is my brand, this is my way of doing things.
Yeah.
And I think that some of it plays into personality and temperament. My personality and temperament, I get bored fairly easy, and so I think I need a challenge to overcome. But if there's no challenge to overcome, I'm just super bored. So
Okay.
So I'm continually looking for the challenge, seeing what's presenting itself, and then looking to how do I overcome that thing and conquer that thing within that. So, and oftentimes I think for the creative, we get really focused into, this is the problem that I need to solve, and this is how I'm going to solve it. And it seems like, well, the easiest way to solve it is this way. But sometimes my expectation to what actually was going to work are completely different things. So I'll use it in an artistic term. If someone comes up and they say, hey, I want to learn how to draw portraits, someone would say, well, what you have to do is you have to sit down and you have to draw a portrait. And then you have to draw another portrait, and you have to draw another portrait, and then another portrait, until you learn how to draw portraits. And I think that that's some valid idea. But if I counseled someone, I'd say, well, go do some sewing. Take a sewing class. And they would say that's ridiculous. I'd say, exactly. We'll go take a sewing class. And then listen to some jazz. And then maybe listen to some reggae. And then draw plants. And then maybe do a sculpture. And then through all those means, you'll learn so much of what's happening with three-dimensional space. You'll learn about sound and all different types of things, and it'll influence and help the place that you feel like you need to go towards. So people would say, hey, I really want to grow in public speaking, or yeah, I really want to grow in my ability to relationally connect with people, and so, how do I learn how to relationally connect with people? Take people out for coffee. Yeah, that's great. What if you start practicing storytelling? what does storytelling have to do with building relationship? Everything. For me, everything is interconnected, right? And so if I start taking a storytelling class or learn more about storytelling, and then I start taking people out for coffee, asking them questions about their lives, saying, hey, check this out, and then telling them this fun story and just laugh, then, I mean, that's so much of the relational equity and relational building thing, you know? And then from there, it's like, oh, well, I have this thing on my heart of, you know, ministering to troubled youth. And it's like, well, what's the vehicle to reach them? I don't know. What's in your hand? I've been telling stories. Then go tell them some stories. You know, I think that's there's elements there that I think, you know, I was teaching years ago in a high school, and I got to a point where I was like, Lord, I said to the Lord, I really want to grow in storytelling and just telling jokes and stories and whatever. And there was times where the bell would ring and the students would stay after school because I would leave all these cliffhangers, and then they would, we have to finish the story. What else happened? Where do we go from there? And I mean, I'm talking about 5 to 10 minutes after, which for a high school student, I mean, I had students trying to cut the class, you know? And so to stay 5 minutes after a class because it's so engaging and entertaining for a high school student when the teacher's been talking for an hour plus, I don't have that attention span. I don't know that anyone in society does, but I think there's something about that idea, you know, so I'm just saying coming at things from different angles and learning to grow for the stuck people, I think is really helpful to get out of those ruts, you know.
I love it. That's great. And then I know for you, this isn't, I mean, we've heard the answer talk as we've been spending time together, but the things that inspire you, your answer is everything.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think all right, so I'm coming from New York and moved to California and I'm here, right? So people would say, man, how do you just, New York and California is such a different thing. I said, yeah, it is. And they'll say, you know, how do you find inspiration here? And I will find inspiration in nature. Don't get me wrong. Like I think we used to live right on the Sacramento River. It's just so inspiring, so beautiful, looking at the mountains, looking at the river, looking at the birds, looking at the trees, looking at how the wind would blow through the trees. It's fascinating. Looking at how the wind would blow through the trees and looking about how the wind would blow on the water and looking at the understanding of wind and water and the reactions of both. I think that's just fascinating. So I find the Lord obviously in nature, but then I do stuff where I'm like, I'm driving in the downtown of Reading in our city, and I parallel park in the middle of traffic, you know, which let's say the traffic is 3 cars and I'm parallel parking, you know, it's not an intense situation, but somehow I do that and I put change inside the meter and then I go get something to eat around the corner and I talk to someone who's just sitting on the street and talk with them, encourage them, and have that sort of experience. And somehow I'm able to extract so much inspiration from that where I'm saying, this is absolutely phenomenal. I've just parallel parked. I put the money in the meter. I didn't, you know, I got to talk with somebody. I got a meal. I bought someone a meal. You know, I sat down with them. You know, I'm getting to minister to somebody. I'm getting to hear their story and encourage them. Like that whole thing alone, that is so, and on the mundane, going into the office. I'm not opposed to office work, but I'm going into the office. I'm sitting down. I'm opening up my laptop. I'm answering emails. Oh, another email just come in. Let me answer that one. You know, I mean, like, there's only so much you could stay inspired with that until, you know, whatever. So, I mean, and if you're wired that way, that's wonderful. So a lot of it just goes on personality and temperament. So everything is inspiring to me. And I'm trying to look at how do I pull the inspiration? I mean, certain things are more overtly inspiring. I'm on top of a mountain after a hike. Like that is, I don't know anyone in the world or in the galaxy that wouldn't be inspired by that. You know, I think that's just absolutely stunning. I'm walking through a city and taking the subway somewhere and eating the most amazing food and interacting with cross-cultural communication. I mean, I don't know anyone who's not inspired by that. You know, like obviously people are not inspired by traffic, muggings, tons of people. I mean, like there's obviously a lot more there, right? But I think it just depends, you know. So everything's inspiring, totally.
I love this, man. I love just the emphasis, the wonder, the sense of awe. I think this is so good.
Yeah.
And I mean, would you say that is sort of an epidemic, like that zombie lack of waking state, like maybe just kind of mundane status quo? Do you think that's a problem in our generation? Or
Yeah, yeah, I think it is, because I think there's so much that I've heard so many people say this, but there's so much that's competing for our attention.
okay,
So everything wants our attention, and I mean, people stuck on YouTube for hours, people stuck on Facebook for I mean, great. It's great to have a town square. It's great to get in touch with people. It's great to see like who has what political views, and how this wedding dress was, and how Father's Day. We all love that stuff to a degree, in small measures, but I think everything's is so competing for our attention that I think I see it on people's faces. I mean, and I have to learn how to do this better. But something I'm like, oh, what if I just went to the grocery store and just walked around and smiled? What if I went to the grocery store and bought some things and gave them out in packages and gave them out to people outside? And hey, you've been asking for this specific brand of potato chips. Yeah, here. I mean, like, I think things like that is just getting us outside of our normal space, and
yeah,
and I think honestly we've lost the awe and the wonder, in so many things. I mean, I heard my son say, I'm learning so much from my kids, right? So I think I'm in a fun season of just watching them explore. And I mean, I come home, they take a box, make it into a monster truck, and then they're coloring on it, and then they fall out of it, and then they pick themselves back up, and they got a bucket for a helmet, and then they have a cape on, and then they're screaming with a siren, and they somehow think that this is like the most amazing thing ever. and I'm like, it's a box from the butcher, and it's a piece of fabric on his back, and it's a bucket that we're putting like sand in. I mean, it's nothing like that anyone would view as that, but for him, it's the most beautiful experience in that moment. And so if I could look at that and say, oh, I got to learn something from that, because I let's say, depending on someone's price point, I'm like, yeah, I can't exactly pick up and take a river cruise in Austria tomorrow. I'd love to, like, that'd be great. Like, I'd love to go to Dubai. Lance, I'd love to take you to Dubai for breakfast and then fly. Like, that would be amazing. But can I do little things here and there that cause some sort of reaction, or cause something that would happen with the creative thought process, and that I could extract some awe and wonder for it. I think, I don't know, maybe I'm just ministering to myself right now and saying, hey,
oh no, this is good. I mean, we're talking about how art beautifies the earth, and you're bringing a strong word about waking up the earth, beautifying the earth, giving people their wonder back. Like, this is so fresh, so empowering.
Because I think that affects. I mean, that affects everything, right? I mean, we keep talking about. I was talking to. I just met a friend, and he was talking about how he's doing breakdancing downtown, and I was like, oh, that's fascinating. I says, next time you go, message me. I'd love to just come by and hang out. We could get a couple of pizzas and just hang out. And sitting on the sidewalk while watching a couple of break dancers, while talking to the youth, while eating some pizza, like, that's brilliant, And it's like, it's little things like that I think we're just needing to be reawakened of, and in our own little daily lives, of how we could just change up some things here and there. And like I said, oftentimes we think, oh, I need these outrageous changes in order to do something differently in my life. And hey, small beginnings are beautiful. Little things are great. But if I could stay in a spot where I'm like, ooh, that there's awe, there's wonder, there's a spark, I see it in people's eyes when they go, huh, I have the office door open, people walk by, they go, I call it the double take or the triple take, where and they kind of can't figure out what's happening, And I'm like, I got him. And then the next day they'll loop back around and go, hey, so what is that over there? What is this? And, and it's just a little thing, is that it's just causing people to think, causing people to think a little bit differently. And I think, obviously artwork has that idea of like, hey, how do we cause people just to think differently? But everything could be set up that way, into architecture, into the way we do music, the way we have people line up to get into a building, the way it could be the most mundane thing, in the world. But I think if it's framed in an interesting way, then I think it's absolutely beautiful.
Well, I love that. I love that thought about like, okay, become a better portrait drawer, do this. Like you're talking about like, don't do what makes sense. Just like stir yourself up,
Mm-hmm.
like challenge yourself to think differently.
Yeah.
Open yourself up to some things that you may not consider as possibilities. Listen to this music,
Yeah.
cook this food.
So, and now I'm not going to go and with the idea that I'm going to start a crocheting business and start making blankets for everybody. Like that's not my end goal, but there's something to extract in that place of learning. I think it causes us to grow in all these areas that we didn't even know, you know, and I've heard this phrase so many people say, I'm coming alive in ways that I didn't even know was in me, you know? And I mean, years ago, I had it on my heart about finding missing children and that whole thing. And I had some friends say, hey, you should go through some of the police chaplain training. So I actually did. I went through the police chaplain training. It was phenomenal. And as I'm sitting there, I'm thinking, oh, cool, like we'll find missing children. And then I'm awakened to this whole other world that was so challenging to the way that I thought about society, the way that I thought about government, the way that I thought about justice, the way that I thought about God and his world and his ways. And it challenged so much in me. But then there was all these things on leadership and leadership skills. And then we were sitting with a small group of us and then no one was leading. And I was like, oh, this is a moment for, I'm going to step up and lead this moment and be a leader in this space. Or, hey, I'm going to ask these questions, or this person's going on too long. I'm like, oh, this is like, these are things that are a part of who I am, that I was awakened in this new space that, and, you know, of doing that. I mean, it didn't necessarily pan out because the time requirement for the police chaplain, but it was fascinating to me. And I thought I was going in for one thing. And then I had some friends, some prophet friends counsel me and say, you think you're going in for this thing, but there's also relationship building. There's also humor. There's also all these other areas that God is highlighting, that you have tools in your tool belt or things that you think are just laying dormant that are for that moment, and they are to come out of you for that space, you know. And I think the Lord does. I mean, so many people have said this, that the Lord doesn't place us in situations that we're not previously prepared for, even if we don't necessarily feel prepared or have necessarily this hyper list of qualifications, that as I am in that space, that the Lord just boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
I feel like I've been trained for this my whole life. And this is a beautiful moment. This is a great intersection of those things coming to being.
I love it. Well, man, this is so good. I love getting a few minutes with you. It's really good to hear what's moving you and kind of your way and your essence. This feels very inspiring. Good stuff. I love that. Waking state, be alive, engage in wonder. How do people connect with you if they're interested in some of the stuff that you're up to? I don't know if there's a way that they can find you, follow you, see what you're up to.
Yeah, I mean, I truthfully have social media that I don't use, and so that's, you know. But I think over the course of the next couple of months, we're mapping out how we're going to have more connection points, roadmaps into the world that we're doing, and so we'll have informational meetings at Bethel necessarily. We'll have more social media posts. We want to talk more about the creative process, the creator, some of those things, highlight and see what's happening on a larger scale. And even just have some questions that we're posing to people, and just different challenges of challenging things. So there's more stuff to come. Nothing too much at the moment. The Bethel website has our ministry page up there, and that could be a way to connect into with email links and that sort of thing. Over the course of the next couple of months, we'll have a lot more social media, YouTube presence, Facebook Lives, like some of those things that we're looking about building out. And so we're just figuring out messages and what that looks like, and who we're wanting to reach, and what type of experiences we're wanting to create. And, you know, so yeah.
Great. Well, man, appreciate you spending time with us. And yeah, hopefully these moments together have been inspiring for you guys in your own journey. Creativity, like, hey, this stuff is essential. It's not a side issue, right? It feels like we need this to stay alive and thrive. So
Yeah.
It's been fun. Francesco Sideli, a good buddy.
Yeah.
And wow, what a voice. Just love hearing you talk, bro. Love you. with that, we're going to say goodbye. Peace to the rest of you. Adios. See you soon.
Take care. Thanks, Lance.